Dear Madam Speaker, the problem the proposition today sees is the severe underrepresentation of women in corporate boards, and that is based on the traditionally privileged position and systematic discrimination of women through the past. We see that we support mandatory quotas because we believe that this will create more balance in the world, in the content of the gender-related social power, and it will cause a positive change in the world, in the perception of gender equality throughout the world. What we would like to say is that we will mainly focus in this debate on the European Union because it has been the idea of implementing these mandatory quotas for corporate boards in the past years. So we believe that by having these mandatory quotas, we will create a positive change in the world. We will present our case in 4 major points. First 2 points will be presented by me, and firstly I will be explaining why exactly corporate boards, and secondly I will be explaining about why this will cause a paradigm shift, and my second speaker will be explaining firstly why time doesn't adequately solve the problem, and secondly why we are morally obliged to do so. So let me just go to my first point, why exactly corporate boards. So, as we've seen in the past, there were many ideas about having mandatory quotas for women in politics. And we believe that that was firstly a good idea, and secondly that having mandatory quotas in the corporate boards is actually the next step from this. We believe that by this we will help the women to gain more social power, because the corporate boards and the corporations themselves, they are a center of social power. Because corporations, they are not just on the national level, they are more international. They go higher than just national level. We believe that when you have a corporation, politics, they need to adjust with these corporations. They need to have some kind of communication with economics, and we believe if we have mandatory quotas for women in politics, this is the next step of improving their social power. This is the next step of giving them more power and improving their situation. We believe that women are severely underrepresented in the corporate boards right now. We see that average is 15% of women in corporate boards in the European Union, and we believe this is not enough. With having these mandatory quotas that European Union suggested, that would be 40% women in each corporate board, we believe that it would be much better for women's position, and they would gain more social power. It will have the impact on politics and on the society, because we know it is not only the politics that have a certain impact on the whole society. We also have stronger, equally good as men in working in the corporations. We see a certain example, as we have been asked before. In Sweden, they have quotas in politics for women. And what we see now, that these quotas are gone, we still have 50% of women in the parliament. We still have strong representation of women everywhere, and we know that Sweden is right now the best country regarding the gender equality. We see that in Sweden, because of these quotas, they changed the mentality this much that they don't even need quotas anymore. They made a paradigm shift, and now people see that firstly, women can be trusted when it comes to politics. Women got a confirmation that they have a place in the politics, and thirdly, now that they have proven that they are actually as well as men in the politics, they have this 50% of representation in politics. We see that this is a very good impact. We have a much stronger gender equality in Sweden, and this is good because we need something as equality. Women, they have this. There is the idea that women are legally equal to men, but we see in practice that is not actually true. And in Sweden, what they did with these mandatory quotas, they did this in practice. They didn't have just the theory that women are equal as men. They improved their situation so far that it has happened in practice. And why do we support mandatory quotas? It is because it will cause this paradigm shift. It will cause the shift in mentality of people. And this is what we need. We need to go this far with these mandatory quotas that we won't even need them anymore. That this will cause such a deep shift in people's mentality that they will trust women. Secondly, they will have a confirmation that women are as good as men in doing what they're what they do, and we believe that corporate boards are the next step after the politics for doing so. Because if we have this politics, we have represented just one side of this power. They have political power. But we believe that with having mandatory quotas in corporate boards, we give them also much more social power, because they will be able to work in economics and in corporate boards, and this is, as we said, the center of social power. So, seeing what we've just told you, that firstly, we need equality, not just formally, but we also need it informally. We need it in practice. And we believe that we are not going to do this as just with letting the time do it itself. We see that we need to enforce this, because we've seen in the past, how did women got a better position in the country? They were enforced. It was a situation that enforced it. It was Second World War, when all the men were fighting a war. We see that then women got a better position in the society. And we see that we have to do the same thing here by enforcing these mandatory quotas. We support this because we see that this will have a positive impact on the whole society and on the women's position in the society. We see that this won't give them just a political power that they probably already got, but this will give them a social power that is also equally or even as much more important than just a political power. And because of the paradigm shift that will happen, then that will change the mentality. We proudly support these mandatory quotas and we beg you to propose this motion.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the floor. We believe this debate is about the real life, and we think we should be absolutely clear on this. This is about changing the lives of women who currently already occupy reasonably high positions in corporations, and not necessarily about each and every woman on this planet. So what we're concerned with is how this is going to affect the women who already hold high positions in corporations, and secondly, whether or not this is at all going to affect any other women in society, and we're of course going to argue that it is not. The arguments that we're going to bring you in our first speech are firstly, one, we're going to analyze how female equality in the boardroom happens, and that it's not only about having a seat in the right room at the right meeting. Secondly, we're going to tell you that private businesses are private and that the government has absolutely no right to institute something like that on private corporations, whereas in the second opposition speech, we'll talk to you why this is bad for current corporations, because the things that are going to be forced on them after they're going to have to change the way they operate right now are going to produce a range of bad effects which we believe aren't worth the non-existent benefit that the government team is presenting here. Before we go into the positive material though, let's talk a bit about what we heard from the government team. Sorry. So firstly, they tell us this is about the European Union. Before we move on, on team opposition, we'd like you to know that the European Union contains countries like Croatia, Romania, Hungary, and also countries like Germany, Austria, even Slovenia. So we're dealing with a wide range of acceptance of women in public life, and we feel that a blanket policy on so many different circumstances, such as the European Union's countries are based in, is going to prove detrimental in a lot of cases. We just don't believe that the government team has showed us enough nuance for us to have faith in such a wide thrown net. Now, then they say we're going to effect positive change, which we don't have a problem with, we just don't think they're going to achieve it. They have two arguments. In the first one, they try to explain to us why it's time to go to corporate boards. And they have two basic points here. The first one is that we've already done this in politics, which we would disagree. Only some countries have already done this in politics. And secondly, then they say that because this has worked in some countries or under some circumstances in politics, it is absolutely going to work in all of the European Union's countries in boardrooms. We think that this analogy is an absolute stretch. We didn't get any analysis. We're not willing to buy this. Then they say, well, this is the logical next step, which we find a very weird, slippery slope argument, as if because we've already done this for politics, we now have to do this for boardrooms as well, which is a logic we find inherently incomprehensible. They give us two effects on this. The first one, two examples, sorry. The first one is Norway, where they just said, yes, Norway has 40% of women in the boardroom, and it had a positive effect. I'm sorry, but we're going to need more analysis on that, especially when it comes to the point where they are going to have to convince us that this is going to work across all of the European Union. They just don't get to claim this has happened here, and it has absolutely led to good effects. So we think this is highly problematic. We think then in their second argument, where they try to explain us how a certain mindset will change, we'll tackle that with our own positive material, but they say that we're going to give women a chance to prove themselves. But what the government team doesn't understand, that it is not on the government to give women a chance to prove themselves. The people who have to give women a chance to prove themselves are currently sitting at the boards of these corporations. As long as these men don't listen, as long as these men don't give time for these women to speak, to give them tasks that are actually meaningful to the development of the company, nothing will change. And unless the government team can guarantee us that these types of changes will happen, we just see absolutely no reason to support a policy that infringes on the right of private corporation and actually causes a bunch of bad effects to support it. Okay, so on to our positive material. We've got two arguments in this speech. The first one about the female equality in the boardroom, and this is something we've already started talking about, right? So the thing that we have to be clear on here is that this is not about the seat. This is not about the woman sitting at the right appropriate meetings, right? There's a whole bunch of business culture that is tied to the way these things work. Now, the first one is that a lot of these meetings happen outside of the boardroom. So you need to know where the people play golf, where they play whiskey. Unfortunately, a lot of the really important meetings in big corporations happen in private clubs, which forbid entrance to women at all, which means that women sitting in the boardrooms, insofar as they're going to have to be dealing with certain business partners who are going to indicate a preference to meet at an establishment like that, are going to be completely cut off from negotiations like that. And we don't have a problem with women missing one or two big-time clients or big-time conversations. We're just saying that this is going to further introduce the rest of the board to this idea that this woman is there as a token representative and that they don't actually have to care about her at all. We find that highly problematic. We think that even if things are going to change, we think that women are going to be forced to adapt to the current male business culture that is present in the boardroom, which is going to effectively maybe not be the best thing for some women to do, because they're going to be forced in environments which are inherently male-dominated, filled with patriarchy, which are going to make these women feel highly uncomfortable. We think it is not okay to force a woman, just because the government can then claim that they have now 30% or X% of women in the boardroom, to now start forcing women in certain countries where business is done in this way, is to go to strip clubs on a regular basis to see how women are being exploited there, even if she doesn't necessarily want that. We want to accept the fact that maybe the plan of, I'll take you in a second, that maybe the plan of the female community or even of the feminist movement is to change these things slowly. Maybe they decided that they want to change the business culture itself first, from high-ranking positions which aren't necessarily in the boardrooms, but are people who set up the meetings, who decide when and how they're going to happen. We think that women can derive a lot of power from those positions without actually sitting in the boardroom and not have all of the adverse effects that might happen to them once they do. Go.
Yes, but we believe that firstly these women need to get closer to these board rooms and so on and so forth in order to change these meetings that happen in strip clubs and so on and so forth.
Sure. I'm fine with the fact that you believe that that is true, but the fact that only 30% of women who usually go to a business school, but only 30% of people who would go to a business school are women, shows us that maybe there just isn't that much interest in women holding these positions. We're not saying that there is absolutely no woman who wants to be there. We are definitely saying that women are being prevented from accessing high-ranking positions in businesses, but we think it is highly problematic when the government decides as to how many women should have the wish to attain these positions, even if they are present in environments that they find fundamentally unenjoyable. We think that's highly problematic, and we don't think the government has the right to do that. Now, lastly, we have a very, very simple idea, which is the fact that private businesses are private, and that this happens in real life, and that people who are sitting in the boardrooms need the appropriate experience, the cultural fit in the company, more often than not, people who sit on the boardrooms are people who founded the company. Which is why we find it completely understandable that we should wait for 10 or 15 years for the generational shift, now that women have starting up their companies, that have started going to business schools, that they are going to gain the experience and actually build up the companies that would allow them to naturally sit in the boardrooms instead of forcing women to go there where they might not have either the wish or the experience. We also believe that partners and private companies have a right to choose who sits on their boardroom, because those are the people who are going to be making the most important decisions. And we find it terribly sad that women have not started up as many companies as men, but insofar as that means that those men are more skilled and experienced to make these decisions in the boardrooms, we don't think anything should change. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, members of this House, what I would like to do today are 4 things. Firstly, I'm going to present you 2 points of contention in which I'm going to rebut what Philip said, in which firstly I'm going to ask the question how equality happens, and secondly I'm going to touch on the point and the idea of private businesses and the ideas that were brought up by Philip. Then I'm going to go over to my constructive case, in which I'm going to firstly explain to you how time doesn't adequately solve the problem with women in regards to social power, and secondly I'm going to present to you the idea that we have a moral obligation to do this, and that we should do this, if not by any other reason, just because of this. So, how does equality happen? Philip tells us it's not about the seat. It was never about the seat, and we understand this concept. We know that most of the meetings are informal, and they have these forbidden clubs in which women can go into. But we believe that when we give women 40% of the voice in the company, this stops happening. When women have a substantive amount of reason and voice in a company, these forbidden meetings stop happening. Because women turn from a minority to a relevant, non-marginalized group in the company. And we believe the whole idea of how businesses work changes when we introduce mandatory quotas. We believe that the definition of how these informal meetings would look would change if we introduce mandatory quotas, because we shift women from a minority when we have perhaps one woman in 10 men and they systematically discriminate against her, to where we have 4 or 5 women in this board when they actually have a substantive voice in what is going to happen, and they won't be forced into strip clubs and they won't be forced into discrimination. No, thank you. So we believe that this changes business culture by definition, and we will not be forcing women to go to strip clubs just because their bosses say they should do so. So secondly, Philip brings us this idea that private owners can do what they want. We believe that they can do what they want as long as they respect basic dignity of people. And as long as they systematically discriminate against women, we should enforce certain actions that will prevent this from happening. Because we believe that everyone has an inherent right to dignity, and when this right is being infringed upon by, per se, private owners, we believe that we have a right and an obligation to stop this systematic discrimination. No, thank you. Next up, he tells us that this is not the role of the government. As I will further develop in my constructive, we believe that a cycle of social power exists. The people that have social power divide social power. No, thank you, Philip. And we believe that the government is the only body that can break this eternal cycle of dividing social power. Because as long as men are in higher position where social power is divided, they will always divide it into men. And if you don't have an arbitrary body that can stop this cycle will work forever, and we will never see positive change in the context of gender equality. And next off, lastly, on the idea that the European Union, in the context of which we're talking about, has some countries that have a high percentage of bigotry. We believe that the European Union has a role evolving countries. It has a role of evolving individual countries to get to the paradigm that the European Union believes in. We believe that if we have countries that have a high amount of bigotry, the European Union has the moral authority to change this idea, to enforce certain rules, to increase social equality, and we believe that the European Union is the right institution to do that. And even though we may have some problems in the short term, research has shown that in the long term this works. And this works, it actually comes to gender equality and no efficiency drops actually happen. But now on to my constructive material, in which I'm going to present to you firstly the idea that time doesn't adequately solve the contemporary problem, and secondly that we have a moral obligation to do so. So let's start at the beginning. We believe that time doesn't adequately solve the contemporary problem. We've seen women's position in society improve over time, but we believe that they have reached a glass ceiling when it comes to social power. We believe that they're at a stage of where we have this false illusion that women are actually equal to men in society, but we believe that this isn't so, because in the higher ranks of society we don't see an equal division of social power. We believe that this policy should introduce this. So we haven't seen any substantial changes in the context of a glass ceiling in the past couple of years. And we believe that this is particularly important in the context of corporate boards. And this is where we come to the idea of this cycle of social power. We believe that the people up high above in the positions with power only divided to those people that they trust, that they believe are the best, will do the best in their interest, and not necessarily to women. And we've seen in the past 70 years that this systematic discrimination has been happening. We believe that the only changes that have happened, no thank you Philip, have been those that were a result of public pressure, where these companies actually choose some women as tokens to prevent public pressure from happening. We believe that the only changes that have happened are these small tokens of women in corporate boards that the big bosses have chosen to dismiss public pressure. And we believe that the government has the moral authority to break the cycle. The governments, particularly the European Union, has the moral authority to break the cycle, and this is the only way that substantial change will actually happen. We believe that this is the right thing to do if we want paradigm shifts to occur, and if we want these cycles of social power transferring from one group to the same group over and over again to stop. So on to the second line of argumentation, but before I go on, please Eva.
Okay, so do you really think that those that are the most entrenched in this cycle of powerlessness are the women that are the candidates to become the members of the corporate boards?
We believe that women are, in general, not included in this division of social power, and we have some women that are in, and as I explained previously, those are mostly used as tokens. We believe that women have an inherent interest in power, they are just not given power, and this is what we want to solve. So secondly, after the idea of moral obligation, we believe that we have a moral obligation to give women quotas in corporate boards. Now why is that? We believe that we have to repay the crimes of our forefathers in the context of solving the problems that those crimes have caused. We believe that we have a moral obligation towards those crimes because we have been perpetuating those crimes. We have not solved the problems of gender equality that have been caused in centuries in the past, and we've been perpetuating them by not giving women equal amounts of social power, by not giving them equal rights for years and years. And this is one of the last contexts we have to solve if we truly want a sense of gender equality. We believe that these problems have clearly not been solved. We believe that because of that we have a moral obligation to solve the crimes that remain if we want to evolve.
Še enkrat lepo pozdravljeni. Zdaj tukaj v zaključnem govoru bi rad izpostavil sem identificiral neke točke spora, ki bomo razširili na nek demokratičen način, kajti glih to je pač.
As a society, and if we want more equality, and we believe that this is the right way to do this. We have parallel cases of this, such as with indigenous cultures and minorities, and we believe that it is really late for Western society to only now start acting on this systematic discrimination. We believe that we have a high amount of moral obligation to actually repay women for systematically discriminating against them and for pushing them down to a lower position in society. We believe that this is the right way to go if we want to evolve the society. So we introduce mandatory quotas for women because this creates a paradigm shift, because we're morally obliged to do so, and because this is the only way to solve the problem at hand. Thank you.
We have reached a glass ceiling in our society. That is what the last speaker said in his speech. Yet, I don't know if they're aware, but let me just count a few female CEOs that got the job in the last 3 years. And those are the CEOs of Yahoo, HP, IBM, Pepsi Company, Xerox, Aram, and even General Motors. All of those CEOs got their job without a quota, under the so-called glass ceiling that the proposition tried to present in today's society. Well, these examples right here obviously prove that there is no such glass ceiling. So let me now first move on to their constructive material, and then move on to my constructive, where I'll prove to you how it will be actually harmful to the companies themselves to impose such aggressive quotas immediately. So, to start with their arguments, first on, they told us that time does not work. The time is not enough and we have to do something now. And that we have this glass ceiling where women don't get more social power and they don't have social power. Well, I just cited quite a couple of female CEOs. And even if that's not enough for you, they talked about how companies are taking these women as tokens for the boards. What they're doing under their policy is only taking 40% of the tokens. Why would that token position they're presenting in today's society change under their policy? Why wouldn't that happen that there would only be then 40% of the tokens? And as we saw in Norway, which did impose the 40% quota in corporate boards, we did not see any raise in female CEOs or presidents of the boards. No high rankings inside the boards were achieved by those women because of all the things that Philip was explaining to you, because men see those women in the corporate boards as something that's forced upon them. Some tokens that need to be there, that couldn't get there by themselves, and are there just because they have to be for the social equality. So why should they why should the men tell them about the secret meetings in clubs and such? Those things would not change. The men would still hold them. They would just exclude the women who were forced upon them to sit next to them in the boards. So we're not solving anything. We're not giving them more power. And this is proceeding as we go, as I told you, with the female CEOs. And further on, they told us about how we have to solve the crimes of our fathers. That we are perpetuating the crimes that our fathers did, and we're responsible for that. First of all, in law, you can never be held accountable for the crimes of somebody else, even if you are related to them. And secondly, we don't think we'll be solving the problems with their quotas anyway. We think we'll be only perpetuating the problems by instilling the view that women can't get there by themselves and need a helping hand from the government to push them there. And that mentality will sink in, that women aren't capable of getting there themselves. They need the help of the government to put them there so we can have them there, and not getting there by themselves. And that's not giving them power. That's giving them imaginary power and giving them a pat on the head and say, here, you can sit here now and be happy on the board. Well, we'll do all the work. That is what's going to happen, and that is not solving the crimes of our fathers in a moment, Egon, but that is only perpetuating them and making them even worse. Wouldn't you agree?
So the problem is that women have no possibility in getting all those positions. Not that they can get there, they have no possibility of getting there.
Thank you, but I think the CEO of General Motors would disagree with you that they can't get there. They obviously can get there, but by their own work. But with instilling the quotas, we would show a wrong message that they cannot get there by themselves. They obviously can, but we're showing the world that they can't if we impose the quotas. And that is what we're trying not to do here today. We're trying to give them real power. We're trying to make the world so that they can choose what they want to do. And that is not by giving them quotas, because if we give them quotas, we give them imaginary power, as I explained before. And further on to my constructive matter, how that would have great impact on the companies themselves. We see many companies work successfully in the way they work. Each and every company has a very specific way of working. Each and every company has presented a model of work which suits them the best. What we're doing with quotas is going into those successful working procedures and forcing something utterly different on them. Something that they have no say in, and something they can't do anything about. We are taking their traditions that have proven to work, throwing them out of the window, and saying you have to do this like this and this and this. Now what would that mean for the companies? For the companies that would mean, of course, a drop in their line of work, because they aren't able to work in the way they were used to anymore, because a government had stepped into something that is private and forced on something private, as was explained by Philip, something that is private and forcing on them something that they did not choose, something that isn't going to help them, and something that's utterly different than their successful methods they have developed through the years. And furthermore, in a moment, just go.
So you believe that those ways, if they work, are still legitimate, even though they discriminate women?
Well, obviously, Pepsi company made it work so that they have a female CEO. So, obviously, you can make it work with women as well, and companies are making it work. But what we're doing here is forcing them to work in a certain way they do not. And what's even more, what I was trying to say,
njihove primere, njihove trditve, ter se lotijo njihovih argumentov. Torej, gremo se kar na začetku. Kaj smo zaslišali v njih? Iz njihove strani smo slišali v prvem argumentu, da je to slab zgled, če legaliziramo marihuano, ja pa kaj si gremo, kaj si bojo mladi mislili, legaliziramo marihuano, ampak pazimo, moramo biti pozorni. Če nekaj legaliziramo, to pomeni ne, da bodo zdaj vsi postali odvisni, kakorkoli, mi jim damo to na izbiro. Zdaj pa vprašamo, ali je slabo, da promoviramo svobodo izbire? Kot svobodni državljani imamo na voljo izbire in s tem, da jo imamo več, to je ne dobro. To je svoboda izbire posameznika človeka in le da še jasno poglasnim, tega nasprotna ekipa ni znegirala. Torej, svoboda izbira vsekakor je. Potem, da bi kar rad šel na nekaj, kar nas je zelo motilo. Skratka, večina njihovih oziroma vsi...
People will see that as a result of women. Changing successful ways of work because of women. And they will blame it on the women. And that is not and this leads us back to the imaginary power we're going to give them. And that is not what we're trying to do here today. Because we do have already successful women, and women do have a chance of succeeding in corporate life today. Because we don't want to give them a patronizing pat on the head and just say, you can sit here, but you'll have no real power, which would happen under the quotas. And because we believe it's simply going to harm women in corporate life, please oppose the motion. Thank you.
Not happen without government acting.
as their first speaker said, because the power lies in those now who are sitting there, and they are not willing to accept women among them. But if we want to stop discrimination, we have to do something, we have to enforce them to do so, because as our second speaker said, by themselves it will not happen. The cycle of power will not break by itself. There has to be someone or something who will do something about it, and not just let things happen, because the time apparently does not solve the problems, and the government has to solve the problems. Because we only have 15% of representation of women in those corporate boards, and we believe this is not enough, and if this is not enough, if they are not represented enough, we should do something about it. So, to my first point of the debate, in their first speech, they talked about the problem for women for adapting in business culture of the man. But as we have explained you, the thing is that if there are 40% of women in corporate boards, it will be practically not useful and stupid from those men to exclude them from decision making, to exclude them from the important meetings and important economical discussions they want to do, because it will not be efficient for the company if they are excluded. And that's why the change in work will happen, and it will happen on a positive way. The women will be represented and their voice will count. And that leads us back to their second argument of negative backlash, which will on the long term not happen. And what will happen? Women will be represented, and women will have the voice and will not be excluded from the decision making, because 40% is not a little, 15% is not enough. So, to second point of the debate. So, we have been given exactly the false equality that we are trying to break here from today's side of opposition. Today's second speaker comes up and lists us a couple of CEOs that are currently on their positions and are female. But the thing is, that is only showing the fake equality that is in today's society, because there is one information, and the other information is that women are still not represented in corporate boards, and those CEOs are not making any good out of that. Because if they are there, it doesn't mean that also the women in the other corporations are represented enough and will be represented enough with the time. Because as we have seen through the past, it does not happen. So, again, no thank you, about the cycle of power. The thing is that, as I have presented you before, without the government, there is no way for women to get there. Because without enforcing some change, the change will not happen. Because as we have heard from today's side of opposition many times, men are not willing to accept them. And we believe that it is our moral obligation to accept them and to give them enough, as much power as the men have, because everybody is born a human, man or a female, and because of that they should be equal, and this is what we are standing for. So besides that, they contradict themselves with that point. The thing is that Philip comes and says that women are not able to work in corporate boards, that it is hard for them to get on with the men in the world. And then someone comes up and says that women are already there. We have many CEOs, and the equality is completely reached. And we believe that this is simply a little weird, and we believe that they should decide someone. Okay.
What we're saying is not that the problem doesn't exist, we're just disputing your claim that time doesn't change anything. We're showing you examples of where nothing happened but time, and more women showed up on boards of corporations.
Well, but the thing is that what they are showing us are some certain examples of certain CEOs that have happened, but not the actual example how the percentage of women in actual corporate boards through many countries has happened in real life, because we are debating real life, not only a couple of examples that are standing out and are not the average. What we want is the chance for the average women. So yeah, so the third point I would like to talk about is the patronizing pat on the head, as today's second speaker was talking about. He said that if we implement quotas, we show that women are not capable enough of sitting there, and we have to do something to help them there. But the thing is that we are not doing this. What are we doing here is giving someone who is inherently the privileged a privilege that they should have in the first place. We are not giving them an extra right. We are giving them the basic right that they should have, but they don't have because of discrimination that has happened through the history. And we believe that this is, in its basis, unfair and it should be implemented. For all those reasons, please propose the motion.
Disputing here exactly in this debate. They try to convince us very powerful and with great rhetoric that we need equality, and this is something that we haven't ever disputed in this debate. We're not arguing that women shouldn't be more equal. We're not arguing that there isn't pervasive sexism in the society. What we're arguing is that the quotas in the corporate boards are inherently the wrong way to achieve it, and that the principles on which they're basing their claims are false and are not based in the real life. So what I will do in my speech is I will go through 3 stories. I will talk about the story of social power, about the story of success, and about the story of freedom. And I will show you why in all of those 3 stories, the story that the side government presented us is false and it's not rooted in the reality. So firstly, let's talk about the story of social power, where today's side government comes up and says, well, we see that women don't have enough social power because they don't hold enough high positions in the companies. We see that this shows a complete misunderstanding of how a woman, or any person for that matter, climbs a social ladder in the corporate world. And we see that this is the problem that they come up with. The thing is that if you want to climb the social ladder, woman or not, you need to be, first of all, white, rich, well educated. Those are the people that get the highest in those corporate environments. If we introduce those mandatory quotas on the corporate boards, of course the women that will get to the corporate boards will not be those that are at the bottom of the pecking order, but those that are closest to these corporate boards already. And what will happen is that those will be women that, first of all, will be of right ethnicity, white, rich, well-educated, those who had very good conditions to come into the corporate world as such. Second of all, those are usually women that are either not married, do not have children, or have enough social support and financial background so that they can climb the economic ladder without this being a drawback. And thirdly, those are women that are already well connected, and that women that already have the personality traits, the aggressiveness, and the way of thinking that usually men at the tops of those corporate ladders value, and those are the personality traits that brought them to the top of this ladder. Well, the fact is that those women are kind of like men at the top of those corporate ladders already. And the misconception that the side government is doing here is that just because we will put some breasted figurines in the boards of directors, they will act in the interest of the woman and will not be entrenched in this world of corporate sexism and such. Just because you put someone who is female on the top of the board in a certain situation does not mean that you're solving the problem of the sexism as such, and that you're solving the problem of the corporate environment as such. The fact is that those women also grew up in the world of sexism, and the problem is that all the men who work with those women also grew up in the world of sexism. And just because you're putting the women on those positions, you're not changing the dynamics, you're not changing the value system, and you're not changing how the system operates. With this, you're just creating the illusion that women are empowered just because they are sitting on a certain seat, but this doesn't mean that you've changed the culture that disables them from being empowered. And we believe that this is inherently wrong with your proposal, because what we want to do is the solution we're doing is statistically correct and improves a problem that is shown in the numbers. We want to create an environment in which the women will not be disabled or hold back from climbing this ladder in the corporate structure, and this is something that you're not solving. Now, moving to the second point here, before that, Eva.
We're just saying that women can stop adapting to these specific traits of a patriarchal society when we introduce quotas, because they don't have to be so interconnected with the men that are important.
Okay, this is not necessarily true, because when you're talking about corporate boards, and I think we made this pretty clear in our team line, is the fact that corporate boards are at the top of the corporations. Those are people that hold a lot of power, and you are not just going to let a complete outsider into the corporate board. So even if you introduce the 40% quota, this means that the women that will get into the boards are the women that are high up in the corporate ladder already. So those are the women that are least affected by the sexism in the society, and that are best off from all the women in the society already. So you're not tackling the problem of disadvantaged women in the society at its core. And with this, you're creating an illusion that you're solving something. Well, actually, you're just solving the problem that is most easily solved, no thank you, while you're not tackling the rest of the problem in the society. Now let's talk about the stories of success. Here they make a lot of misconceptions that are very patronizing and insulting to women. First thing they say is that we tell women that they can do it. And here they make this incorrect claim. They talk about that women need to be given trust, they need to be told that they can do it so that they believe that they can do it. And with this, they're proliferating this inequality in the society, and this general perception that half of the population, which is genetically same and has the same intellectual potential, has to prove that it's worth the same as the men in the society. You're proliferating this distinction between genders, and you're putting pressure on women because they have to be proven that they will be believed that they can be successful. Second of all, this is patronizing to women, as we've told you, because this is, again, helping women to get on a certain position, and it means that you are not trusting them really that they can do it on their own. And thirdly, you are proliferating the idea, and in your rhetoric, this was clear all the time, that men and women are different, and that there is a clear division between genders, and this is the idea that is very pervasive in the society, and this is the idea against which we should fight. Now, second of all, you're telling that with this we will tell the men that women can do it. Well, the fact is that women in the high-ranking positions are in a lot of pressure already from the men. The fact is that you're saying that they will be suddenly treated equally just because they will hold the same position, but this is an illusion. The fact is that women are facing a lot of sexism in the workforce. Women that are like a lot of, that are in the media a lot, especially those that have a lot of power, are under a lot more scrutiny than men in the similar positions. We see that what you're proposing actually will proliferate this problem. First of all, those women will be ridiculed in the workplace because they will be there, but they will not come there under their own merit. And because of that, the men will resent them even more. And second of all, what makes you think that the people who are currently in power will simply accept the women that come into this, and that the women will have enough authority to change the working environment there? We believe that this will simply not happen, and it was your burden of proof to prove it, which you haven't managed to do. Now, thirdly, let's talk about the story of freedom. What you're saying is that because the time doesn't solve the problem, we have the right to infringe upon the freedom of the private world, on the freedom of the private corporations, and to tell them what to do. We believe that this is simply not true. We see that in the economy, those that are giving the jobs have the right to decide who they want to hire. We believe that yes, time does not solve things by itself, but we believe that there are other mechanisms that are much more efficient than just meddling and forcing people, because corporations here can just decide to move company into another country where these laws aren't implemented, or they can bully the woman into quitting as soon as she gets in the corporate board so that they do not have really these women in power. We see that what we need to change as a society is to change sexism in education. We need to economically empower the lower class so that much more women from the lower class will be able to climb the corporate ladder. We need to have a first set of childcare services. We have to have prevention of discriminations, all those mechanisms that empowers women so that they can climb the corporate ladder, not just be picked out from the top and put into the corporate board. And because of that, we believe that the opposition wins this debate. Thank you.
campaigning for something, according to the side proposition today, I must not hire a white blonde woman, especially a young one, because they're overrepresented in campaigns. Because there's an underrepresentation of other women, such as Asian or African-American. I have to hire one of those because they're not represented enough in those campaigns. That is the logic by which today's side proposition is fighting underrepresentation of women in corporations. What we're saying is what we have been saying today through the entire argumentation line on the side opposition is that you're not solving the problem here. First off, you don't have the right to infringe on those things, and secondly, you're just making it worse for the women. And how is that so? I'll prove that to you in two main points that I've seen as the main clashes of today's debate. And firstly is, are we giving women true power or not with their plan? And that is by giving them 40% on the boards, they claim that we will start accepting women, we'll see that they deserve trust, and that they are capable, and men will start appreciating them on the boards. Now, what's the logical reaction of men if they get forced 40% of the board as women, and then they get those 40% forced upon them? Of course, their logical reaction would be defensive and not acceptive. It's a very aggressive move, and that's what side proposition today did not recognize. It's a very aggressive move that will prove resentment in the rest of the board. And we have proven through quite extensive analysis how men won't give them real power on those boards. Well, on their side, they just said 40% is enough for them to have real power, because it wouldn't be logical for men to ignore the 40%. Well, that's not a real analysis if you ask me. And further on to perception. They set the goal today in this debate for themselves that they're going to change perception of women in today's society by giving them real social power. As Eva has just beautifully proven to you in her speech, these will be women which already do have social power, at least in a way. And secondly, we have proven to you through a multitude of different side effects, as resentment in the corporate boards, as showing that they're not capable of getting there themselves, but we need to give them a push there and force them into those boards, as changing the successful ways of corporations, and as infringing on the rights of private corporations to hire who they think will be the most beneficial for their company. That will only increase the perception of women as not being capable of, and definitely not changing the perception of women in today's society. We all agree in today's debate that something has to be done, that there is a problem in today's society with women in power. But we have shown to you that quotas are simply not the right way of doing it. Because with quotas we give women imaginary power, we just instill the mentality that they're not capable of getting there themselves. And because it won't change the major distribution of social power anyway, that is why I believe that there is only one logical vote in this debate. Thank you.
Dear Madam Speaker, in my reply speech, I will ask myself, two major questions and then I will do an analysis of this debate. Firstly, I will be asking myself what kind of consequences will happen if we have mandatory quotas, and secondly, I will be asking myself why we should do this, or why should government or European Union do this. So firstly, what we hear about consequences. We hear from the side of the opposition that we will give women an imaginary power and that won't be a true power and so on and so forth. And they were saying that some women already have the power, they are CEOs. What we're seeing here is the big picture. If we have 10 CEOs, we don't think that is enough. We don't just want women to be CEOs, of course that is great, but we also want women to be in corporate boards. We want them to have a certain percentage, a big amount of women in corporate boards in order to make some change. Because if we have one woman one CEO and then for the rest 10 corporations, we don't have enough women in corporate boards, we don't think that that is good enough. We're here looking at the majority of cases, and we think that if we give them these mandatory quotas, if we give them like 40% of women in each corporate board, then we believe, firstly, we give them the power. They're saying this is imaginary power, they will be excluded, men will feel resentment, and so on and so forth. Like, firstly, what we want to tell here is that this is a time of that. Of course, there will be some shock and time of transition. That happens every time. What we are seeing here is the long-term picture. We are seeing this that once this shock and transition will be over, we think that this will be a perfectly normal thing of happening, and these corporations will be able to function normally. What we heard from Eva later, so on and so forth, that these women that will be in corporate boards, that these will be rich, educated, and white women that already have some social power. What we see here is that, firstly, if we will have in each corporate board 40% of women, we don't think that all these 40% of women will be rich and so powerful and white and so educated women that already have a high situation in social work. We don't think that we have this many women that have such a high position in society. We think that if we have in each corporate board 40% of women, they won't be all this kind of way, and they won't all need to adjust to men and so on and so forth. What we see is that if we give them this chance that they change something. We already explained that before, that if we give it the time, we say, yeah, maybe something will happen, maybe there will be a change. But if we do this, we know that there will be a change, and in the long term, this will be a positive change, as we've proven here. And now to my second point, why this should be implemented, why the governments or the European Union should implement. As Egon already explained on our side, we have this cycle of social power that is happening, and only an arbitrary body can break this cycle, and this arbitrary body can be a government, or as we said, it should be European Union, because they should empower women. This said, we will have negative effects. We will have negative effects if governments or the European Union mess with the private sector and so on and so forth. What we see here is that this won't be necessarily negative effect, because as we said, after the transition, in the long term, women will be something totally normal as a 40% quota in these boards. This will be something perfectly normal, and of course they will have a certain power, and these corporations will start to function that way. And we don't think that this will be such a terrible thing for these private corporations, that they won't be efficient anymore, because we don't think that women will have such a detrimental effect. Of course, as we said, on the long term, there will be some negative effects, because there is always a shock. There is always there's not enough efficiency, but in the long term, this will become something totally normal. This will get in people's mind, and we think that we should empower women on this way, because what we see, they're not equal now. If we give them this push, then, as we've proven on some cases in Sweden, let's say, this will become something perfectly normal. And for the women and for the equality in the society, please propose this motion.